day, South Africa. The ruling party of South Africa is duly doing its duty of protecting its constituents by utilizing the full might of both its justice and constitutional development and the police departments to trace and apprehend perpetrators of violent and sexual crimes against the most vulnerable members of our community. 2 months ago, the National Minister of Police, Senzo Mchunu, spoke publicly about having taken over the alleged rape case of a 7-year-old girl publicly known as Twetwe from Matatiele in the Eastern Cape, after having noted the delays in the effecting of justice for her and her family. Subsequent statements came from the lower levels of the hierarchy of this ministry when 3 months ago, the South African Police Services or SAP's Deputy National Commissioner, Tebello Mosikili, in keeping the public abreast of the developments, revealed that the police team investigating the case weren't allowed access to speaking to the alleged rape victim, nor did her mother accept any psychosocial support for herself. This matter has aroused the attention of global leadership pertaining to the contravention of violence against women and children, such as the United Nations Children's Fund or UNICEF and the Equality Now organization. UNICEF has released statistics on the prevalence of the sexual violence against girls and women, and these numbers indicate that these incidents are a global phenomenon, with a total of 370 million females around the world having been victims. Based on the UNICEF statistics, in the African constituencies where the punitive measures against sexual crimes are more stringent, such as the Northern African states, the prevalence of these sexual assaults is significantly lower than anywhere in the world. Equality Now, which comprises of our Allegiance Country Leadership Legal Institutions alumni, has also voiced out the need for South Africa to, quote, act on Twetwe's case, including, unquote, the requirement for, quote, expedited justice and accountability for the perpetrators, along with broader systemic change to tackle gender-based violence, unquote. Students from Johannesburg, alongside GBV awareness organizations, recently conducted a march in support of law enforcement efforts regarding this case.
The rape incident of the little girl has sparked widespread outrage and condemnation, including on social media. It is alleged that the school management refused to cooperate with the police during their investigation. And this has led the Eastern Cape Education Department to deregister the Matatiele-based independent school. The perpetrator is yet to be arrested. Wits University SRC president says government needs to take action and ensure perpetrators face serious consequences.
I don't think the government is doing enough. I think more things should be done when it comes to the issue of gender-based violence, because like I'm speaking to you right now, there's currently a woman who's being raped. Like I'm speaking to you right now, there's currently a child who's being abused or who's being raped, and we're just chilling and want to speak of this thing as if it's a thing that happens once in a while. It happens each and every day, and there's so many cases that get reported. Even those who get reported, there's no one who ever gets to the bottom of it. So it means each and every person who does these things to women and children never face the consequences.
Over 100 marched through Johannesburg to voice their frustration at the escalating cases of abuse, including against minors.
I think men are standing against GBV in South Africa because even if we can look around here, 99% is women. So as men, I think we need to do better into supporting these women to fight GBV.
This should not happen anymore. We can't be tolerating this. We can't always go to TikTok and then we find news on TikTok and only then things happen or the justice systems does a little bit of something. We need to know what is going to happen. We are tired of feeling like this.
Organizations fighting gender-based violence have called for the constitution to be amended in order to deal harshly with perpetrators of GBV.
Don't see any change as long as we don't see the amendment of the constitution which has all the rights for the perpetrators. Read our constitution and tell me there's a law that says the victim has a right to XYZ. I've never seen that law. Maybe it's because I'm not a lawyer or I'm not educated, but I've never seen a law that protects a victim.
Being head of the police force of the leading economy of the continent of Africa, Minister Mkhunu has deployed 3 different investigative officers on Kwekwe's case in seeking to achieve adequate closure for her in addition to her family, including all those affected and concerned. 2 months ago, the AfriForum non-governmental organization released a communique which expressed its support and representation of Kwekwe's school principal, who is one of the suspects in this heinous sexual assault crime. The ANC is urging the police to acquire some DNA samples from the principal of Bergview College, despite his refusal to do so, compounded by AfriForum's insistence that he is not a suspect in this matter. In referring to the Criminal Law, Sexual Offences and Related Matters Amendment Act No. 32 of 2007's Chapter 2, Part 1, Section 3, we can establish the legal definition of a rape incident as it is described as, quote, any person, A, who unlawfully and intentionally commits an act of sexual penetration with the complainant, B, without the consent of B, is guilty of the offense of rape, unquote. According to Kwekwe, while she and her schoolmates were waiting for the driver who transported them to and from school, they were asked by the school's caretaker to go and sweep a classroom. She says that henceforth, after being exhausted from the activity, she lost track of events. The ANC feels that all the relevant authorities at this school need to be thoroughly investigated and have their DNA samples taken in order to put together all the chains of evidence so as to solve this crime. Whip of the ANC Study Group on Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities, Comrade Tsehafatso Megan Chauke Adonis, is reporting on the ANC's resolve to counter this growing global scourge of sexual assaults against women and girls. Keeping in line with the statutes of the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, Act No. 108 of 1996's Chapter 2, Section 23, Subsection 1, which stipulates that, quote, everyone has the right to fair labor practices, unquote. The ANC and its tripartite components has, 4.5 months ago, acknowledged with great approval the 150 million rands payment by the Treasury to the South African Post Office, or SAPO. This payment was for the purposes of getting the SAPO's finances stabilized, as this state-owned enterprise hasn't, for the past few years, been able to fully pay its employees, leading to mass retrenchments and the closure of some branches. These new developments are what has been fought for by the South African Communist Party's, or SACP's, national chairperson, Dr. Blade Nzimande, who has been reiterating the fact that, quote, the state and Postbank entrusted with a developmental mandate should not be subjected to the same set of regulation that apply to commercial banks, unquote. The SACP's efforts in trying to create an environment conducive for South Africans to participate in their local economy have been a work in progress for over some decades, and are marked by Dr. Nzimande having stated in 2015 that the SACP is, quote, calling for diversity, for a greater enabling environment for the development of workers and people's cooperative banks, unquote. A sad milestone occurrence was in 2003, where a black pensioner from Umtata died while queuing in the freezing temperatures which have characterized the pension payout queues in the rural areas for decades, exclusively for the formerly disenfranchised majority of our country's population. In light of the great suffering that the people of color of South Africa have historically experienced, another great achievement which has been welcomed by the Congress of South African Trade Unions, or COSATU, which represents the rights of the predominantly black labor force of our country, is the Unemployment Insurance Funds, or UIF's Temporary Employee Relief Scheme, or TERS's resolution to forward 387 million rands, according to COSATU's parliamentary coordinator Matthew Parks, quote, covering 75% of the wages of the SAPO's 6,027 employees over the next 6 months, while SAPO undertakes its turnaround plans, unquote. The Ministry of Employment and Labour has communicated to the media more details on the specifics of this funding.
The Minister of Employment and Labour has formally implemented a 381 million rand lifeline to save the South African Post Office. Nomakosazana Meth has signed an agreement between Sapo and the UIF in aims to preserve 6,000 jobs. Now, this deal is also aimed at supporting the revitalization of the state-owned entity. The UIF will use the temporary employee relief scheme to inject over 381 million rand into Sapo over a 6-month period. This is designed to provide some relief to the thousands of employees while Sapo implements a turnaround strategy. The UIF and Sapo formally entered into a memorandum of agreement marking the establishment of a strategic partnership between the two entities. The minister has hailed the move as a bold and necessary one to protect workers and restore confidence in public institutions. Meth says the funding will be dispersed in monthly tranches via a dedicated TERS bank account with strict governance, auditing and compliance measures in place. To weigh in, we're joined on the line by Ministry of Employment and Labour spokesperson Thobeka Makai. Very good evening to you, Thobeka. Thank you for your time. As the minister, has hailed this move as a bold one, which will be highly beneficial as we look at the jobs that will be saved. Talk to us about the process, what it entailed, and how we got to this point.
Good evening to you, Mpo, and thank you for having us on the show. Good evening to your viewers as well. Well, yes, the process entails, firstly, maybe if I can take you through what happened. So the post office submitted an application to the UIF for the TERS funding. It went through the TERS adjudication committee, who evaluated their application. The committee is quite strict, so they look at the details, they look at the turnaround strategy and what you are presenting, and they then assess whether your turnaround strategy is viable.
Yeah.
State President Cyril Ramaphosa has brought us a step closer to realizing a state-owned financial services provider which can compete with the commercial banks that currently leave millions of South Africans underserved. By signing into law the Post-Bank Amendment Bill in September 2023. It is a realization of the conception of the ANC to create a banking environment which will bolster the development of small to medium enterprises or SMEs while eliminating the overcharging of pensioners just as regular commercial banks do pertaining to bank charges. As an organization, the ANC has done a great deal in the economic liberation of the previously disenfranchised majority of black people of South Africa. Very important to recall are the numerous financial breakthroughs that the liberation movement has been credited with having created, such as, according to Dr. Nzimande, quote, the establishment of the National Credit Regulator, the Cooperative Banks Act, and the regulation of the conduct and activities of the Credit Bureau, unquote. In seeking to counter the scourge of the millions of unbanked citizens of South Africa, the ANC brought into effect the Umzansi account, which requires very minimal commitment from the public to own. Our parliamentary study group has released a statement after reviewing some representations from the entities managed by the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. Thank you.